everybody. Can everyone hear me okay? A little louder?
A little louder.
How about this?
Yeah.
How about this?
How about this?
All right.
Abre la boca.
Thank you all so much for coming. Nibs just reminded me what my grandpa would say if he was here right now. He would look around at everybody and he would say, quietly and slowly, it doesn't get any better than this.
Oh.
That's true. That's true. That's so true. It doesn't
Yes.
get better.
How in the world do we put my grandpa into words? He was beyond the bounds, but we're gonna try today. And if you know me, you know that I'm not very short-winded, so strap in. And
Food first.
you got it. Yeah, you're not allowed to eat yet. And please, laugh along, smile along, cry along. We're all here together. My grandpa is the best man that I will ever know. He's all I ever wanted to be. He was my hero. And my life has been as happy as one possibly could because my hero was my best friend, my closest friend, my grandpa, my teacher, my mentor. And ever since I could remember, he would tell me that I was his hero too. And that felt too good for words. He made me feel like I could just do anything. And I've always felt like the most ridiculously lucky person in the world to have his heart, his love, his guidance. And I'm so thankful that we said that to each other frequently and earnestly. All I ever wanted to be like was my grandpa. The first way I remember trying to emulate him was probably when I was 5 or 6 years old. And the first thing I tried doing was wearing his tool belt. It didn't fit. He would take out a lot of the tools, so all I had was a little hammer in there. And I would just follow him around the shop, the house on Shirley Lane, or wherever the heck he was around Dunmore that day. And as I grew older, my desire to be like him, it only got stronger. I wanted to be a husband like him. I wanted to be a father like him. I wanted to be a hard worker like him. I wanted to be a grandpa like him. I wanted to be brilliant like him. I wanted to be there for friends and family like him. I wanted to be funny like him. I wanted to make people feel the way he did. He always had a way of making you feel loved and respected. I want to enjoy life like he did. We did everything together. He spent countless hours getting my rebounds up until he was about 87 years old. Even when he was in his 70s, he would chase me around the court, holding a broom. Shoot over. I could still hear, he had a couple apartments, and he just always had 50 keys on him at all times. I could still hear the keys jingling in his big, baggy carpenter shorts. If he forgot to wear his suspenders that day, he'd be chasing after the ball, walking in up his pants. He'd come back smiling, and he would say, "I could have just worn my skivvies." And I'll never forget, anytime I would have a good day, or just did anything good, whether it was basketball or not, he would always have the same response. He would get all excited, and he would go, "Hey, good going there, buddy." He taught me how to ride a bike. I remember him letting go of me on Shirley Lane. I felt like I was flying, and then I immediately crashed to the ground. I remember like the burn on my knee, getting ready to cry, and then just see him huddled over me with his glasses and his mustache, and he said, "You did it all by yourself." He taught me how to drive. And he taught me how to drive in this big white Carpenter van. His mobile shop, complete with shelves and hundreds of tools that he built. Oh my God, that was so loud. You could hear Uncle Lou coming from a block away. I remember he took me behind the reservoir to learn how to drive in his van. We got there and there was these big mounds of dirt, probably 10 of them. And he said, okay, I want you to drive around these little mountains in reverse. And I said, what? And he said, buddy, if you could do this, driving on the streets will be nothing. A piece of cake. And don't worry, we won't drive over the bank. When he picked up my friends in that van, it only had 2 seats for as big as it was. The back seats were plastic buckets and bungee cords for seatbelts. It's okay. My godfather was the mayor. He taught me his favorite art, woodworking. I will forever cherish those memories. I got to watch him approach his craft with such a deep reverence, such patience and intention. His work had such precision, but you could feel that it was handmade. You could just feel it. We lovingly worked with his father's tools, and if my grandpa built it, it's gonna last for generations. He loved our Uncle Louie Shop video series. He loved reading the thousands of uplifting messages that we received. But my favorite memories of my grandpa were our conversations. He was a pensive guy, and at least to me, he was an open book, and we talked about everything. We'd go to Zumos for a coffee and come back 3 hours later. We'd speak at the river while we looked at his favorite ducks. We'd speak on the bleachers at an empty gym in Hoop City. Or we'd just talk in the backyard while we admired his favorite hummingbirds. And our conversations always came back to my grandma. My grandpa taught me what it means to be an endlessly devoted husband. He was enamored with my grandma, his friend, from the moment that he laid his eyes on her at the cemetery. I loved hearing them talk about their story of how they met. My grandpa always says it the same way. He says, I looked at her and I saw her, and right there I knew her face. It was just so unusual. It was like odd. Prettier than any model. And then, no matter what, my grandma would always burst out laughing in her lovable laugh. And she would say, did you hear him? He thinks my face is odd and unusual. Watching them live out their love in everyday ways is probably the most treasured gift that I could ever ask for. They were obsessed with each other. My childhood was just filled with my grandparents laughing together. Watching them make sauce together. He would chop the basil real fine. He would mill the tomatoes. I loved watching them start their mornings, buttering each other's toast. Seeing them look lovingly at each other while the other one tells a story. My grandpa was so in love with my grandma's laugh and the way she told stories. And what did you always call him? You said, he's my mighty oak. And that he was. And in our long talks, we'd always arrive at what gave him a good life. To him, it was so simple. It was grandma. And this, he used to say the same way every time. He used to say, Louis, marrying grandma was the best decision I ever made. That set up everything. He said it the same way, and then he would lean back, almost kind of in awe and pride, have a little smile on his face. And he would often talk about how supportive that he made him feel. He used to always say, Louis, you gotta understand, I had some crazy ideas about how to make a living. But she always trusted me and gave me the confidence to pursue my ideas and would support anything that made me happier. He was so in awe of when they were going on their honeymoon, and he was talking about how he was unhappy in his job working at the slaughterhouse. And my grandpa said, just quit. He told him to quit and become a carpenter, which he wanted to do. And he would tell me, Louis, we had nothing. And I mean nothing. And she believed in me enough to tell me that I should quit my job. I mean, that was unbelievable. We had nothing, and we were as happy as two larks. On his first interview for a carpentry job, my grandpa came with him. He got the job. At a river about 2 years ago, he told me that he thinks that his longevity is solely attributed to being happy with my grandma. I found a letter that he wrote to her on her 98th birthday a couple days ago, and he wrote, "Words cannot describe who you have meant to me over the years. I still have that same feeling that I had for you since the first time I met you." He showed me how to be a devoted father. My mom was his pride and joy. He was so proud and in awe of my mom. He loved talking about your unique ability to brighten up a room with your personality, and how strong you are, and your grace, your sense of responsibility, your selflessness, and most of all, how you raised me. I loved watching those two together. That is a duo packed with personality. He wrote that he was about my age, and he wrote in a letter when he was working in Boston that he's the eternal link between my mom and my grandma. Now, my grandpa always loved and respected his family too. He was so proud of his mom for making a life here in America when she didn't even know the language. He always respected his siblings, Patsy and Nikki, and he did not take being a brother lightly. He was absolutely enamored with his father, Michael. He called him Pa. I have his pocket watch with me right here today. He would always say, my Pa was way ahead of his time. Michael was a master craftsman himself. He could build anything and work tirelessly to support his family. My grandpa always treasured any time that he can get with him. And he set the stage for the Uncle Louie that we know today. So he passed away when my grandpa was in Korea and left him all of his tools. And that inspired my grandpa to go to Johnson College and learn how to use tools. That set the stage for the master craftsman Uncle Louie that we know today. And my grandpa always said that he felt like his dad passed on to bring him back from Korea safely. And he did not think that it was a coincidence that when he was visiting his father's headstone, that was where he first laid eyes on my grandpa. During the last project that we did in the shop together, he put up a big frame picture of his Pa on a workbench, and he said, he'll get us to the finish line on this one. And he did. My grandpa was a brilliant and tirelessly hardworking man. He's the smartest man I'll ever know. And he built everything. Before he ever built a house, he stormed into the bank, demanded to meet with the president, demanded a loan so that he could buy a dilapidated house and restore it. And he did it. He turned that into a beautiful house on Shoemaker Street and lived next to his favorite in-laws and cousins. He built their house on Shirley Lane with just Digi, a teenager. He built the house I grew up in. I asked him, Grandpa, how did you do it? You were in the Carpenters Union, you were managing apartments, you were everywhere. How did you find time to build my house? He said, your house? I built that on the weekends. With Michael Martorano. He built my mom's crib. He built the beds we sleep on. He built the rollers that we make pies with, our shelves and cabinets, the fences we put up around a Christmas tree. When he visited me at college, he would come with his drill and toolbox. And he would make extra space for my shoes in my shoebox in the apartment. He said, oh, I hope no one's sleeping. He built the ring box for our engagement rings. He had a template for everything so that everything was repeatable. He called himself the Jig Master. I used to love when we were in the shop and I would ask him, Grandpa, where'd you buy this? And he would say, that? What do you mean? I made that. He had a deep determination to make a life that was good for his family. When he was young, he'd work all day, have dinner, come home for dinner with my mom and grandma, and then go back to work on his next job. Eventually, my grandma would end up tagging along to some jobs with him so they could have some time together. And you know, despite how hard he worked, he was somehow able to be so present in all of our lives. He was always there. I mean, like our entire family. Who didn't learn something from Uncle Lou? Who doesn't have dozens of memories with him right there with us at the table? Dozens. I can still remember before I was old enough to go to school, I'd stay with my grandparents. I remember him going off to work, and every day he would leave me and my grandma a note and a mystery for us to solve that day. And then we'd be in the basement, and I'd see, peeking through the window, I'd see his work boots trotting down around 4 o'clock. We'd run to the door, and every day, same enthusiasm. Hello, 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 hello. He just adored to be part of a big family. He adored it. Pamela, Donna, Franny, Rose, Patty, Nettie, Sandra, Anne-Marie. You were his girls. You were his girls and nibs. You were his partner in crime. You were his nephew. You were his brother. You were his best friend. And I mean actual partner in crime. We're among family. He just adored making us all happy. He adored sharing any wisdom that he could provide to us. He adored spending time with us. And you see, I think maybe the most amazing thing about him was he was just so genuine and good to his core. He didn't have an ego. And I think what I've realized that always amazed me, I don't think he ever tried to be good. It wasn't an effort. Like he didn't consider how to be good. It didn't take effort for him. He just was good. It was his nature. Sharing his time, his advice, his knowledge, his laughs, being physically present in our lives, and just doing the right thing. It was just who Louie Siconolfi was. When he was just married, maybe a year in, my grandma's mom, Santina, was sick and she had cancer. And he and my grandma decided that his mother-in-law would live with them and he'd take on their apartment as well. And I asked him what was that decision like? Were you nervous? Did it take thought? And he just said, what was there to think about? I love Franny's mom. She was so good to me. Of course we'd take care of her. Another example, smaller example of my grandpa just being himself always is we went to his favorite woodworker's estate that got turned into a museum, George Nakashima. He's a hero in the woodworking community, Michael Jordan of woodworking. And his daughter, Mira, was taking us all on a guided tour. There was about a dozen of us. And she was just going through the itinerary, as you do. And no one was really talking or saying anything. As soon as she got done, my grandpa just said, yeah, Mira, hey, yeah. Your father, George, your father, was the heart and soul of a tree. The whole group just melted. And that was my grandpa. He just naturally knew how to show people that he loved them, how to tell people that he admired them. If he loved you, you knew it. You felt it. He was just so full of life. He loved life. He loved it. And he was just so easy to love. I have to remember just a few of his favorite things. Gigi. Oh my God, he adored this dog. We don't even like to call her a dog. Look at her. She was a sidekick. I always loved watching them at the table of our family gatherings with his Gigi in his lap, telling stories and laughing. He made the best pancakes. He would always talk about making them for his boys in Korea. He was in awe of hummingbirds. Louis, they're as loud as a Mack truck, and they weigh less than a nickel. Oh my God. When it snowed, he lit up because that meant that he could put on his big snowsuit and his hat with the ear flaps and run his snowblower. He would take that thing all over Dunmore, and he would always come in, and I could still smell the fresh snow and the smell of like gasoline on him. You say it's a cold one out there, Franny. His sense of style. Talk about being genuine. Who else could wear a French beret, a leather jacket, and a mustache in Dunmore and not look like they were trying? I love seeing him wear all my old clothes. My Hollister and Abercrombie and Fitch stuff that I wear to homecoming. Oh my God, whenever we put anything on Reddit, the internet was always in an uproar over his style. Especially his hats. He can make anything look good. A beret, a beanie, a winter hat with ear flaps, a suede cowboy hat, a Cuban Havana hat, a backwards fitted hat, a safari hat, a bandana. He could rock it. He loved ducks. He was like astounded with ducks. They held a really special place in his heart in a funny way. And nature in general, but really ducks. And the last week has been really hard. And the last few days, I've been going to his favorite spot in the river where we would talk and look at ducks. I went once with V, once with my mom, and once by myself. And every time we went, it felt like the ducks were putting on a show for us. We saw them sleeping peacefully. We saw them soaring. I never saw a duck fly before. We saw them dunking their head in the water, and it reminded me of when my grandpa would snorkel in a 4-foot pool with his goggles on. He'd come up and say, "You gotta try this, you can see everything down there." One duck with my mom even just jumped right up on the rock and was just staring at us. I could feel him right there. And it really made me feel at peace. He was so proud to learn karate. And he didn't learn karate the way most 40-something-year-olds learn karate. He learned karate with my mom's teenage friends in their garage, and then my grandma would make them sandwiches after. I love the way he pronounced things. There's a way to join two pieces of wood together called a mortise and tenon. And there's a lot of different variations of it. And he called one, he said, "I'm going to teach you today about a true tenon." And I said, "Oh, awesome, Grandpa. Now tell me, why is this like the one true tenon and every other tenon is like a variation of it? Like, why do you call it a true tenon?" And he said, "Because this board goes true the other board." He bought this like old concrete donkey that had ears missing, and he restored it. And every time he would go outside, he'd look at the donkey. Me and my grandma named him Felipe for some reason. And he would say, "I love that donkey." And one other thing that he was always proud of, in grade school, Louie Siconolfi was a marbles champion. So I ask everyone, let's always keep Uncle Louie in our hearts and live as he would. When we see a hummingbird, when we find ourselves wearing a hat with a little extra personality, when we have the opportunity to share any knowledge or teach someone something, when we're faced with a challenge, when we come across a piece of handmade furniture, when we eat peppers and eggplant, when you hear someone toast and say "Chindan" over some wine, when you want to tell someone you admire them, when you see someone give a fist bump, when you see ducks, when you smell sawdust, just think of my grandpa, my hero. Thank you.